So it is my great pleasure to be here today for Carrie Crane's geometry lessons and Michelle Lougee's souvenirs and castaways. These shows have nothing to do with one another. They are unique, completely separate entities. And yet for audiences, and I think you're one of them, who love close looking, layered thinking, and creative connections, there are some amazing synchronicities to be found. I'm so glad Carrie and Michelle are exhibiting together, and here's why. Created by artists who tinker and play in the most hopeful of ways, these shows explore basic building blocks that all coalesce around a greater purpose, and if we're lucky, perhaps even a search for humanity-saving truths. By configuring platonic solids in novel ways and busting open their symmetry, their seams and their sides, Carrie may just reveal some hidden, as yet unknowable logic about our complicated universe. She presents us with stunning spirograph-like works on paper, non-objective drawings, and painting combinations that smack of constructivism and suprematism, but that are instead individual homages to the beauty and mystery contained within a cube, an icosahedron, a dodecahedron, an octahedron. They are filled with exquisite and unexpected patterns that are decorative and yet deliberate, and completely derived from excised fragments of the original Platonic forms. Inspired by the new shapes these drawings laid bare, Carrie ventured into the third dimension. Some of her sculptures are direct echoes of these drafted outlines. Some provide portals to the formerly unseen interior spaces of these solids, and yet all are their own kind of wondrous futuristic architecture, complete with color bursts, reflective surfaces, shapes within shapes, and Escher-like drawings that challenge our perception of reality, illusion, and the ways that curves and angles relate to one another. To my excited eyes, they also have a little bit of the alien in them, I think. Whereas Carrie has chosen to muck about with visual structures of ancient philosophy and mathematics, Michelle presents us with a kind of environmentally oriented Dada for the 21st century. Simultaneously straddling hope and futility, Michelle consistently finds witty new ways to expose and lament the ubiquity of plastic in our midst. In this exhibition, she offers us delightfully absurd attempts to preserve and protect a library of present-day natural specimen. Feathers, pine cones, shells, and seeds are cleverly matched with and then encased by repurposed plastic packaging, birch bark backgrounds, and frames of crocheted plarn. These are contemporary souvenirs, treasures, and relics, displayed in a way that conjures connections to Renaissance cabinets of curiosities. Michelle's curios, however, serve to reinforce the fact that no matter how lovingly we choose to package, market, and arrange our natural world, we are suffocating it with plastic. There will be a point at which these organic things are no longer available in our environment. This notion is driven home still further by the pods and sticks that are irrationally wrapped and bandaged in heel and seal, traditional cloth onesies that are instead fabricated from ghost-like post-consumer plastic, and photographs in which plastic bottles serve as portholes through which to view the world around us. Plastic is quite literally framing our perspective as it hastens our extinction. These artists know that we are living in some strange and terrifying times, and the rest of us know that art can be an antidote or a call to action about much of what ails us. Thank goodness artists like Carrie and Michelle have what the latter might refer to as break glass in case of emergency sensibilities. They are disruptors who are bold enough to make Plato's perfect polyhedra embrace a bit of chaos just to see what might happen, or offer up uncannily packaged natural artifacts for sale to jolt us out of our complacency. We can only hope that their disruptions may well unlock a secret that saves us all. But enough of my introduction. It's time to hear from the artists themselves. So here we go. Here we go. So with Michelle's souvenirs and castaways, we can have a slightly different discussion. Not only is it different work, but there are different pockets of work here that all relate to common themes. And so I would like to address some of them individually, and I have some questions about all of them as a whole too. And I'd like to start with the works, the fantastic works on the wall that I'm facing, that first wall when you enter the gallery. Does that wall, is there a name to that section?
Those are the souvenirs.
Those are the souvenirs, excellent. So I want to invite Michelle to talk specifically about what these souvenirs are, how they're made. I mentioned briefly that there is a natural artifact, there is a backing, there is a frame, there is a plastic package. And before I turn it over to Michelle to really describe all of that and how it came together, I want to just mention that one of the things I was most struck by in our studio visit was not only how beautiful they are, but I very quickly forgot that this plastic packaging wasn't actually made for the things that are inside. And you could go through this and you could pick out your, Dr. Scholl's orthotic or the scissors container, right? And that is a layer to this work. But I was just really struck by how that aspect of the product totally recedes, and that she has completely created a successful marriage here between the object and the thing encasing it. So I was hoping you could talk about that.
So I've been collecting plastic for a long time, and it started with just plastic bags. But as my work progressed, what I collected also progressed, and I started to see shapes that I wanted to work with. Contact lens packaging was a big one. I just came from the eye doctor and I have great new contact lenses. See everyone. Somewhere along the line, I also, started collecting. I think the scissors one was the first one. So I collected this blister packaging that comes on top of everything we purchase. So the shapes are very interesting to me, but also, I started to think about how, the way my work evolves, how it interferes with nature, and what are we really doing coating every single thing with plastic. So the packaging, like I said, the scissors were first, and I put it together with a stick, as it were, and I had a material that was, it's like printed paper, but it looks like plywood, so I loved the wood grain on the back. And then, because I crocheted around the edge, and so that original piece kind of started kind of a call and response to what I was thinking about. And as the work progressed, and I kind of said, okay, we need more of these, I need to develop this idea. I did want to use actual bark to put behind it, and they started to kind of remind me of roadside attraction, souvenir shop kind of thing, nostalgic from my childhood, where something might be like a birch bark boat or something like that, that you might pick up at a roadside attraction. So as the work progressed, I think, it's sometimes the object that I wanted to enclose came first, and sometimes the plastic came first, and I thought, oh, I have to find just the right thing for this. So in one case, I had these spotlight bulbs that have this funky shape, and so I had that, and it's hard plastic, so I knew I had to use that. The day I went to do that one, I turned around and there was a pile of seashells behind me, and they just had the same kind of cone-like shape that fit so perfectly into that packaging. And then another one that came up, I guess that was the same, plastic first and object second. But the light bulbs, I had this plastic packaging from some flame-like light bulbs, and went on a walk with my dear husband, and we found these thistles, and I thought, that's the perfect thing. So they were very prickly, and we brought those home with us. Did I cover it?
You did?
Okay.
Yeah, beautifully. So now I'm going to ask you the same version of the question I asked Carrie. do you have a favorite?
Oh, you know, they're like children.
They're all your children.
They are. Oh, yeah, so my child says, isn't it the one that has your children in it? So I guess I should say yes. And so that one is on the end here with a little boat inside. And I can put it not for sale. But they're my favorites at different times, I think. Like, I really love that simple tube with the pussy willow inside. I love the crab that is missing its little pincers, but the plastic kind of gives you a shadow of the pincers. And the glacier that has floating ice in the photograph in the back. So sometimes I use photographs in the back. And then I've had these feathers for a long time, since before I was married. The feathers have these little spots on them, and it kind of, the ice in the photo and the spots on the feathers have the same, I don't know, they just work very well visually together.
Cool, yeah. So there may be some people here who are not familiar with Michelle's past work. So I was hoping you could just define plarn and maybe elaborate. I'm curious on how long it took you to create these frames.
Plarn is plastic yarn, mashed up together. And it's the, when people ask how long did it take to make something, there's part of it that's like, first of all, it's a process, right? So I collect the bags, I sort the bags, and I cut up the bags and process them into plarn, and then I make something. So there's a lot of steps along the way. And then, in this work, I've worked with plastic yarn for a long time, but this work with the crochet is much more refined. So I was able to learn how to read a pattern and use different patterns that sometimes relate to what's inside of the plastic.
Cool. Yeah. So, and I'm just curious, in fact, I'm not a crocheter or a knitter. So I'm glad I asked the question, because clearly I love that the designs are deliberate and it's not, and so, I remember an Instagram photo, an in-process Instagram photo where I think you had one of these plastic souvenirs almost ready to go, but for the plarn framing that you needed to do. You were on a road trip, you were doing something. Did you finish it?
I did.
Yes.
It's great. That's my husband lets me work in the car. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So the next question I have is about, it's something that we talked about in your studio a little bit, and I think everyone can pick up on here too, especially by the beautiful, whimsical, serious, and absurd way that we're trying to protect and preserve and heal and seal these objects. The various of the souvenir frames have a lot of humor in them. If the birth control, for example, and the seeds that get larger throughout. This is all just so clever and wonderful. And so, for a subject that is both devastating and hard to swallow and going to kill us all potentially, but is also something we rely on, I'm wondering, how do you approach this intermingling of humor, hope, and loss? Is it intentional? Like, are you? Yeah, I know. But that to me is what connects so many of the different bodies of work that we see here. That and because you are able to hit all of those different layers, that is what makes it so successful. So I wondered if that was. Clearly it is deliberate on your part, but I wondered how much you think about that too. And is it more after the fact as you're putting them together? Because the humor is there, the loss is there, but these are also very hopeful pieces. So I guess talking about that dichotomy.
So I think my work, this is a change from my work. So as I said before, I've been crocheting like large pieces that I'm thinking about the plastic debris in the ocean and making microscopic organisms from the ocean. So this work represents a large change for me, but also I think an opportunity to look at a new, like to think about more nuanced ideas and to contrast different things, to really kind of poke at the absurdity of what's happening in our world. But also, I think my work, some of my prior work was colorful and playful and fun shapes and a little too whimsical for the subject in some cases. So I'm happy to kind of have gotten to this point where a more nuanced and universal kind of, I don't know, it's like mourning in some ways. It is hopeful because, we can, in emergency, we can break the glass and plant the seeds, but it feels like they're set up, for me, it's kind of thinking about a point where we really don't have these things available to us anymore. So, yeah, cover that.
Yeah, totally. Yep. So, you're gonna hate this question now too. But so you touched on this a little bit when you talked about nostalgia and your own experiences and memories. And so, to my eye, these works, as they are layered with hope and humor and loss, they are also simultaneously about past, present, and future. And so you've addressed that a little bit. I'm wondering if there's anything more you want to say about that, concept of time here, concepts of nostalgia in each of these series, or in some of the series that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay. I think, we haven't really spoken about the onesies, and I think I do think past, present, and future is present in a lot of this work, and that's one of the things that I find really exciting about it. For the onesies, I think they can be read in a lot of different ways. It makes them very universal. I think about, as a mother, that the baby doesn't actually stay this small for very long, but I'm also thinking about what is this, the future generation? There's nothing, there's nothing in there. Or, we have our babies and we plunk a plastic pacifier in their mouths and wrap them in, polyester clothing or whatever. But so if the past, present, and future, I do think it's also, as I said, in the kind of roadside attraction or Victorian, curio closet situation that's happening in the Souvenirs. But also I think as we peer through, I'm thinking about, in some ways this is a very strange, modern, absurd object. But, where I wanted to peer through and have that be our portal. I love that word. I didn't get to it in that. To how we view, our environments, and to think about what can we do to stop, put an end to what's happening or to reverse it, I guess.
Yeah. Cool. I thought I'd just offer a quick reflection on the onesies that are made of the bubble wrap onesies. From our studio visit, I could only remember, I couldn't remember whether it was just the flat plastic or the bubble wrap, and I'm glad to see the bubble wrap here because I was thinking about it. For anyone with young kids, those poppets are all the rage, and plastic poppets, right, that we are now creating for the purpose of kids to just poke through them and use it. But this was the poppet of my generation, right? This was what you did, and And it made this incredible satisfying sound, and that's how you just, you know, I don't know, somehow blew off some steam too. So I just think it's interesting how we continue to create more plastic to fit the needs that we make.
Yeah. I feel like the bubble wrap onesies are maybe a little more hopeful than the, I think of this material as kind of like thin ice, like it's gonna shatter even though it really won't. But the bubble wraps are like a little more protected, you know.
Yeah. So I'm just going to ask you the kind of a version of the last two questions I asked Carrie, which were, what surprised you about the work while you were creating it, and any like big mistakes or problems that you encountered along the way that forced you to pivot and have given us what we see here.
Well, this might be one of the first shows that I have like a whole more work at home that didn't come to this, because I had an idea about an installation with this industrial plastic, like sort of making a whole room, and you know, kind of tried to get to a place where I thought that was going to work here in the gallery. But in the end, I felt like the things that made it here were the most successful of those particular ventures. Where was going with that? Other surprises, mistakes, pivots. So yeah, I think it's. I have a wonderful group artist group that I work with, and one of the ideas with that was that came up in that group was that maybe the gallery show is a midway point and not an end point for the work, and so I think that kind of it's a great place to be in your mind in terms of an artist working, because after the show you kind of think like, okay, what do I do now? But if you're in the middle, you know what to do next, right? And I do already have ideas for what I want to continue to do with this work, and they're kind of disparate, but we'll get there.
Shall we open it up?
We can open it up. Yes.
Hi.
I'm part of that group. And I had the wonderful opportunity to see the larger piece you had conceptualized. It was fun now to come and see what you ended up with as a part of this piece here. I see all of these pieces as little jewels that are just extraordinary in themselves, as well as in the whole. Thank you. But I'm just very lucky to have seen the work in process and to know what you eliminated and what you kept in, and how much incredible amount of work you created since you saw it last.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else?
Can you explain the plastic protection versus the cotton protection, like what you were?
The wall of cotton and plastic?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called Heel Seal, and I was thinking about kind of suffocating with the plastic wrap that we wrap around everything, and then thinking about the cotton fabric as like a bandage. So, you know, contrasting like the smothering and the healing. And so simplicity, not that I've really gotten to simplicity here. Simplicity is very hard for me. So that's maybe the simplest thing I've ever done. Somebody said, oh, well, you could just do one. I thought, oh. That would never occur to me.
So I really loved the photographs, you know, looking through the plastic bottles. And it just struck me that, you know, my glasses are plastic, and just this idea of seeing through plastic all the time.
We're
was
always
like,
seeing through.
thanks for that.
I have a question. So I lived with you since I'm a kid, but so I've seen a lot of this work since its beginning stages, and I've seen the plastic bottle go through a lot of stages of photos and it helped you take some photos. And so I was wondering, how did you choose which photos you wanted to keep in the show and which ones stayed at home?
That's a great question. Because one of the ones you helped me with is not here, right? I guess you can't always tell. And the day that we photographed it was raining, which, like, so it's kind of a funny thing because I want what's inside the terrarium to be, or the viewfinder, to be kind of positive, but I want it to be blurry and out of focus and not accessible. So the ones that we took on the rainy day, the bottle got drops on it, just didn't kind of do what I wanted it to do. It took quite a long time actually to make this weird thing, absurd. I'm gonna use absurd instead of weird, but, and so there was a limited time. I feel like I would take more photographs, and that's kind of the most, I hung them, I had them printed on wood and hung them, and then I thought, oh, I have to crochet frames. So I did that, and I put those up last Sunday. So it was open for a few days without the frames.
I really like the Phoenix, and I wonder how you got the idea, when you got the idea.
The one with the fire. Oh, I don't think of it as a phoenix. That's so awesome. Well, as I was working on this plastic room that isn't here, there were different elements that were coming out, and one of them was kind of like Greek mythology or mythology in general. And so we have Atlas. I don't know if he's what he is. Is he Greek or Roman? And I have like an Icarus. So the Phoenix is perfect. But so I collect plastic, and it comes in many, many forms. So I have made a piece that isn't here originally out of this kind of industrial shrink wrap. And so then I went to one of the artists in the group and said, do you have, just mentioned it to her, do you know where I could get some of this? And she said, oh, I have this friend, she works at a condom factory, I'll just let her know. So she gave me 5 giant garbage bags of this industrial shrink wrap that they wrap around the pallets that come and go from the factory. So as I pulled it out, I pulled out the big man, Atlas, and basically it was like, I could see his figure right away, and kind of tacked him up on the wall, and I've spent a lot of time with it since then, but the original thing just had a lot of energy in it. And that kind of continued to happen. I went to BU, so I studied the figure, and might haven't really seen it in my work in a long time. So I just kept kind of finding them in this plastic. So that's actually, some of the figures are left at home.
And I really like the human head on Phoenix too. It seems to look like a human head.
Yeah, I'm glad you can see it, because I feel like I want it to be I don't feel like I need to define every inch of it, but I do want it to be suggestive of a figure. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? I want to say thank you all so much for coming. It's wonderful to see so many friendly faces, people with questions. Cecily Miller, everyone.
Question, but also possible opportunity. I wonder if you would be willing to work collaboratively with someone who had gathered something from nature, a memento that was meaningful to them, to create one of these souvenirs collaboratively.
Yes, I have some other friends. Okay, so I've already spoken with some other friends about doing that. My friends have a grandmother, who passed away and had a giant, apparently, shell collection. So of course my eyes lit up when I heard that. my collection is a little depleted at the moment. So we talked about having some specific, they don't really wanna keep the whole collection, but to choose some really special ones and create some work from that. So yes, I'd be happy to do that.